The silence in the hangar was suffocating. The smell of blood, metal, and something unknown filled the air. Alexei stepped back from the dead soldier. His last words echoed in his mind, like a refrain that wouldn't fade. "They aren't human." Shevchenko moved closer to one of the bodies and reached out toward its face. He carefully pulled back the charred skin and froze. Beneath the thin layer of human flesh, metal gleamed. Everyone exchanged glances. Timer nervously swallowed. "What the hell is this?" The commander only sighed. "That's why we say they aren't ours. Some of them look like people, talk like people, but inside, there's something else." Alexei felt his chest tighten. "Cyborgs." The commander shook his head. "If only it were that simple. We don't know what they are, whether they're people who've been altered or something made from scratch. But what they've done to our own, this isn't war. These are experiments." Timer turned sharply. "So they're not just soldiers? They're changing people." The commander nodded. "And not just people. We've seen them take prisoners, and we've heard rumors about other things." Shevchenko frowned. "What do you mean?" The commander took a deep breath and slowly said, "They say they're not just changing people. They're changing the very nature of war." Everyone fell silent. A noise came from behind the hangar door. They turned. Outside, there was a metallic scraping sound, as if something heavy was moving across the ground, clawing at the metal. Alexei instantly grabbed his weapon. The commander raised a hand, signaling them to stay quiet. Everyone froze. Something was waiting for them outside the door, and it seemed to know they were there. The metallic screeching continued to grow louder. Alexei gripped his rifle tighter, feeling cold sweat bead down his back. Timer nervously swallowed, while Shevchenko's eyes were already scanning the hangar for possible escape routes. The commander seemed calm, though his hand was resting on his holster. The rumbling stopped. An oppressive silence fell, and suddenly, a dull thud against the door. The metal rang out as if struck by something heavy. A second thud, a third. The door began to bend inward, as if pressed by an inhuman force. Alexei raised his rifle. "If it breaks through, we shoot." The commander gritted his teeth. "You can shoot, but who said it'll stop it?" The fourth blow landed. This time, the sound was accompanied by a chilling mechanical hiss, like a mix of a human voice and electronic distortion. Whatever it wasn't just breaking in, it was waiting. Shevchenko whispered sharply, "Is there a back door?" The commander shook his head. "There's only a ventilation shaft, but it's too narrow for all of us." The fifth blow, the door began to crack. Timer couldn't hold back. "To hell with this." He fired. The burst of gunfire hit the door, and for a moment, everything stopped. Then, from the other side came a sharp, piercing sound. Not human, not mechanical, but something in between. And in the next second, the door was ripped from its hinges. A shadow burst into the hangar. Tall, slender, humanoid, but with long metallic limbs. Its face was smooth, like a mirror, without eyes, a nose, or a mouth. And then it spoke. "You were not supposed to see this." Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Alexei gripped his rifle and whispered, "Run," and they bolted out of the hangar, leaving the unknown horror behind. But Alexei knew they would meet again, and next time, there would be no running. Dust and ash rose beneath their feet as Alexei, Shevchenko, Timer, and the commander rushed through the ruins of the hangar. Behind them came the sound of metallic hissing and swift, silent steps. "Don't stop," the commander barked sharply. Alexei glanced back, and his heart froze. The creature was following them, but it wasn't running. It walked, calmly and unhurriedly, as if it knew there was no escaping it. "Where to next?" Shevchenko gasped, gulping air. The commander pointed to a ruined bunker ahead. "That way. We might lose it." They dashed toward it, leaping over debris and potholes. Alexei looked back again. The creature was no longer walking. It had vanished. Timer caught his glance. He didn't have time to finish. Suddenly, the air was pierced by a metallic sound. The creature appeared in front of them. It had simply disappeared and reappeared. Shevchenko cursed. "What kind of devilry is this?" The creature tilted its head. "Resistance is futile. You are not meant to know." The commander yanked a grenade from his belt, pulled the pin, and threw it directly at the enemy's feet. An explosion, a wave of fire, and smoke threw them backward. Alexei felt a ringing in his ears. His body hit the ground hard. He lifted his head. The smoke was clearing. The creature stood in the middle of the flames. Unscathed. "Your war is over." It raised its hand. At that moment, Alexei realized it was the end. But then, a loud shot rang out. The creature flinched. A second shot. A third. From the darkness of the ruins, someone was shooting. "Move!" A man's voice called out. The commander didn't hesitate. "Get up. Run." Alexei, Shevchenko, and Timer scrambled to their feet. The unknown figure kept firing as they dashed into cover. At the last moment, Alexei glanced back. The creature was no longer standing. It lay motionless on the ground. But Alexei knew this wasn't over. Something had begun, something they didn't yet understand. And this war was only entering its true phase. They raced through the ruins, never looking back. The mysterious marksman ran alongside them, silent. His long cloak billowed in the wind, and in his hands, he held a rifle with a silencer. Finally, when they reached an abandoned tunnel, the man stopped and turned to them. "You're safe. For now." The commander panted heavily. "Who are you?" The stranger pulled back his hood. He was a gaunt man with short gray hair and deep scars on his face. "They call me Fear." Timer nervously smirked. "Is that like your code name?" "It's what I feel every day when I look at them," he replied dryly. Alexei clenched his fists. "You know what these creatures are?" Fear slowly nodded. "They're not human, not machines. They're remnants of something greater, something that shouldn't exist." Shevchenko frowned. "Can you make it simpler?" Fear sighed. "They weren't created by war. They created war." The commander tensed. "You're saying they were here before?" Fear looked directly at him. "Yes, and they've come back for what belongs to them." Silence. Only the wind howled in the darkness of the tunnel. Alexei felt a chill deep inside. And now what? Fear checked the bullets in his rifle. Now, he gazed into the darkness. Now we either find a way to stop them, or they'll remake us. The walls were covered in rust, debris, and old cables hanging from the ceiling like dead vines. The air was heavy, filled with dust and a sharp, oily metallic scent. Fear walked ahead with confidence, as though he knew the path well. The rest of the group followed him, gripping their weapons tightly. "This tunnel," Shevchenko muttered. "How do you know about it?" Fear didn't turn around. "Because I've been here before." The commander stopped. "When?" Fear slowed his steps. "Years ago, I thought I'd found the answer. I was wrong, but now we have a second chance." Timer shone his flashlight ahead. "And what are we looking for?" Fear stopped before a massive metal door. It was covered in symbols that none of them could understand. But one symbol stood out. 3 circles, interwoven with one another. Fear reached out and touched them. The door began to hum. "We're looking for the truth," he said quietly. A mechanical click echoed from inside. The door started to open. Cold light spilled out from behind it, casting shadows on the walls of the tunnel. Alexei stepped forward, and then he saw it. A row of capsules, filled with something alive. The air grew even heavier. They froze in place before the rows of capsules, bathed in dim, greenish light. Inside each one, something moved. Alexei felt a chill run down his spine. "What is this?" he croaked. Fear stepped closer. His face remained impassive, but his fingers clenched into a fist. "These are the ones who didn't make it out." Shevchenko approached the nearest capsule and shone his flashlight on it, and froze. Mother of God. Behind the glass was a person, or what had once been a person. The face was stretched in a silent scream, and the skin appeared translucent, with black mechanical threads running underneath. The eyes, empty, devoid of pupils. But the worst part, it was moving. "They're alive," Timer exclaimed, stepping back. Fear slowly nodded. "Alive, but not themselves." He moved down the row of capsules and stopped in front of an old terminal. "They're not just captives. They're experiments." The commander gritted his teeth. What were they experimenting on? Fear pressed a few buttons on the terminal, and the old screen flickered to life. Rows of text appeared. Project Rebirth. Stage 3. Infection completed at 87%. Adaptation phase in progress. Subjects ready for activation. "They're not just killing us," Fear said quietly. "They're trying to change us." Alexei couldn't take his eyes off the capsules. "Change us into what?" Fear looked him straight in the eyes. Into them. Suddenly, the capsule in front of Shevchenko shuddered. Inside, The creature jerked and slowly turned its head toward them. Its eyes glowed red, and then all the capsules began to stir. The capsules shook, filling with an eerie hum. Shevchenko recoiled, aiming his rifle at the glass. They're waking up. Fear was already at the terminal, quickly typing commands. We have time, if they haven't completed activation yet. The commander glanced at the screens. Initialization system activated. Awakening, 12%. And what happens at 100%? Alexei asked, though he already knew the answer. Timer stared tensely at the creatures in the capsules, which twitched and started breathing. They'll get out. The commander made his decision instantly. Fear, stop it. I'm trying. Fear's fingers darted over the keyboard, but the system wasn't responding. Access denied. Initialization cancellation impossible. Damn it. Someone is controlling this process remotely. Alexei looked up. Thick cables ran along the ceiling, leading deep into the complex. We need to find the server room. If we cut the power, we might stop the process. The commander nodded without hesitation. Splitting up isn't an option. We stick together, move fast. Shevchenko, do you know how to shut down systems like this? I'll figure out on the go, he muttered. Then let's move. They dashed toward the lab's exit. Behind Alexei, he heard a creak. He turned. One of the capsule's glass began to crack, and the creature inside was smiling. They raced through the corridors as sirens blared and red emergency lights flashed, casting bloody reflections on walls. Shevchenko, how much time do we need? The commander shouted, trying to be heard over the roaring noise. If we find the server room, 5 minutes. We've got 2. Timer glanced back over his shoulder. In the distance, at the end of the corridor, the iron doors of the lab started to shudder. Something big was pounding from inside. They're breaking out. Fear stopped abruptly in front of a set of heavy armored doors labeled server room. Access restricted. This is it. The commander didn't ask. Open it. Fear quickly input a code into the panel, but the screen flashed. Access denied. I'm locked out. In the distance, the iron lab doors groaned and cracked open. From within crawled the first creature. It had once been human, but now its body resembled a horrific amalgamation of flesh and metal. Its arms were elongated, with fingers that had turned into thin, sharp blades. Its eyes burned red, and it saw them. Run! Timer shouted, opening fire. The bullets tore into the creature, but it didn't even flinch. Open the door, or we're dead, the commander barked. Fear didn't respond. He pulled a small disc-like device from his pocket and slammed it against the panel. Sparks flew, blinding them for a moment. The server room doors clicked and slowly began to open. Inside, they rushed into the room, and Fear, with a final kick, slammed the doors shut. A muffled thud echoed outside. The creature was already there. Shevchenko, work, the commander ordered. He was already at the server racks, his hands darting over the wires. I need a minute. Bang. The iron door shuttered. The commander gripped his weapon. You got 30 seconds. Another blow. The doors began to bend inward. Shevchenko gritted his teeth, ripped out one of the main cables, and connected a portable device. The screen flickered. Main control, disabled. Awakening system, canceled. And then the sirens fell silent. Fear turned sharply toward the doors. Beyond them, it was quiet. Timer exhaled deeply. They shut down, but the commander didn't relax. Or they're just waiting. Fear cautiously approached the doors. He listened, and then someone on the other side spoke. A raspy, metallic voice. We found you. And the doors were ripped off their hinges with a deafening crash. The iron doors were ripped from their hinges as if they were made of paper. Thick dust filled the server room, and through it, they saw a silhouette. Tall, faint, but it wasn't like the creatures from the capsules. It was worse. We found you. The voice didn't come from its mouth. It resonated in their minds, as if placed directly into their brains. The commander immediately raised his weapon. Fire. The rifles roared. Bullets tore through the dust cloud, but the silhouette didn't even flinch. Then it stepped forward, and they saw it. A human, but not quite. Its skin was covered in a fine web of black metal, and its eyes, they weren't there, just 2 dark hollows, oozing some kind of black substance. Its hands, they seemed to be made of tiny mechanisms constantly shifting, altering their shape. "Who are you?" Timer shouted, backing away. The entity tilted its head. "I'm the one who watches. The one you forgot. The one who became something greater." The commander tightened his grip on his rifle. "Are you one of them?" The entity smiled. "I was human. Once. But I opened my eyes. And so will you." It slowly raised its hand, and the server room came alive. Wires ripped from the walls as if they were alive. Screens flickered wildly. Shevchenko suddenly screamed, clutching his head. "What's happening to him?" Alexei shouted. "It's breaking his mind." Fear yelled. The entity took another step forward. "I am not breaking. I am opening." And then Shevchenko abruptly raised his head. His eyes burned red. He smiled. "I understand." And then he aimed his rifle at his own comrades.